Hello, everybody. Michael Tracey here. How are you? I am well, thanks. A new study has come out, authored by or co-authored by Max Abrams, who is a professor of political science and public policy at Northeastern University, and who I interviewed or did a dialogue with a few weeks ago. So I'm going to link to that dialogue in the description box of this video, and you can watch that for yourself. I think it's about an hour long. But Max and his colleagues have a synopsis of his findings out today in Foreign Policy, the foreign affairs publication. And basically, it summarizes their findings after spending some time studying the beliefs and behavior of Syrian refugees. So there is a particular path that certain refugees take to try to gain entry into Europe, and they do that by going through what's called the Balkan route. So they go through the Balkan states in Eastern Europe, and these researchers, including Max, deployed people to survey these refugees. And of course, it's impossible to conduct a statistically representative survey, given that you can't compile a sample that is demographically accurate necessarily to extrapolate firm conclusions based on, as you would through a typical polling survey. But they were able to speak to 130 refugees of varying backgrounds, and that's more than most of us can say, obviously. So the fact that it's a small sample size, I think, shouldn't negate a view that this contribution is extremely helpful. The authors don't purport to have anything resembling a statistically representative sample. So that said, they deployed researchers and social scientists along this Balkan route and engaged with and interacted with Syrian refugees, in a pretty complex series of questions were asked. And one of the most jarring findings is that apparently only 16% of people queried blame Assad alone for the violence which caused them to flee Syria in the first place. So that would not be evident to you if you have been following along the Syria narrative based on mainstream media reports. Assad is portrayed and has been portrayed as the evil orchestrator of all that's gone wrong in Syria, and nobody's making excuses for Assad or trying to overlook or whitewash the various crimes that he and his forces have plainly committed. But it is very notable that only 16% of these refugees, and again, not statistically representative, but there are certain things that you can extrapolate with some caution. Only 16% say that Assad is alone to blame for the misery and chaos there. A vast majority of people who were surveyed state that they blame a combination of forces, including the so-called rebels and ISIS. So this is notable, and I think you don't see it much in mainstream media in the United States, because the narrative that's put forth in this foreign policy article and by Max Abrams and his colleagues implicates United States government policy, namely the Obama administration, because the CIA and the Pentagon both funneled arms into Syria and fueled the civil war that eventually contributed to many thousands of Syrians feeling that their only option was to flee. So that's one narrative that is challenged by this. And what I like about this study, at least the synopsis version of it, is that it countervails narratives that are promulgated from a variety of actors across the spectrum. So that would be one example. Another example is that it is quite easy, according to these people who were surveyed and questioned, to bypass the EU's security measures and enter Europe. So a number of refugees stated that they did not have much trouble at all getting through various checkpoints and entering Europe, that no travel documents were even required, that those who did encounter some security checks found the entire process shambolic and ineffectual. So that would seem to bolster criticisms from the right that security and, quote, vetting measures to ensure that extremists and radicals and fundamentalists don't enter into Europe are lacking. But then what Abrams and his colleagues further state is that the main problem that refugees espouse, having to do with Europe, has nothing to do with any kind of cultural divide that is insurmountable or unbridgeable, right? So something that you hear from the ethno-nationalist right in Europe and also to some extent in the United States is that these Muslims are so in hoc to an extremist foreign ideology that they can never assimilate to Western culture. But that's apparently not the main problem at all, at least as relayed by these Syrian refugees. The main problem is more practical. So insufficient resources provided to them, and they blame in many regards fellow co-religionists, other Muslims who have exploited the situation, housing, unemployment, and they actually to a large degree speak fondly and appreciatively of European culture, whatever that might mean. So that would seem to contradict or countervail one of the prevailing right-wing narratives as to what the source of these problems is. Also interesting, and this is sort of, I guess this would sort of be countervailing to the mainstream political establishment and also law enforcement establishment narrative, is that the refugees who were questioned here and analyzed, they tend to speak rather favorably about quote-unquote smugglers, and they tend to view smugglers who were helping them make trips across unforgiving terrain and the Mediterranean Sea and so forth. They tend to find smugglers as to be their allies, or to be people who are on their side and actually trying to help them, even if they might be financially exploitative. They nevertheless view smugglers as friendlier to them and their interests than European authorities, who treat them callously and force them to take refuge in establishments with very poor conditions and are just not conducive to a healthy lifestyle. So those are some interesting findings. I look forward to reading the study in its entirety. Again, this is a summarization, essentially, that appeared in Foreign Policy today. And do watch that full conversation I had with Max Abrams a few weeks ago if you're interested in a fuller explanation of what was found here. And of course, all this material will be linked in the description box. So with that, I wish you a very good night. Bye-bye.